I haven't even said anything yet, and I'm already getting an applause. That's so nice. Okay, yeah. So my name is Shelby, and I'm here because I really value this community and the practices that we engage in together on a weekly basis and the ways that it shapes me for the upcoming week. So briefly, just a little bit about me is that I'm 21, and in just a few weeks, I'm about to graduate with a degree in psychology and sociology from Southern Nazarene University. I'm really excited. Yeah, just another fun fact is I'm a barista and I'm really passionate about coffee. So this is just a little bit about my story. So I grew up in a church, in a Baptist church in Edmond, and I had a lot of really amazing experiences at this church. It was really beneficial for me in a lot of ways. One thing, though, that I often received as a message growing up was that people who went to church really had things together. Like, they always acted like they had their lives together and that things were just like going really well for them. And you know, that message was received in several ways for me, but it really was something that I internalized a lot. And so when my parents divorced when I was 12, I ended up leaving that church and kind of going to different churches through my teenage years. Again, I had great experiences at different churches and different denominations, and I learned a lot of things. But ultimately, I never really felt like I fit in because I never really felt like I could be like truly myself. And, you know, there's a variety of reasons in that, and I don't want to just blame it on the church, but that was just kind of my experience. It just never felt like it worked. So by the beginning of my freshman year, I just stopped going to church because I wasn't really finding any meaning or purpose in it. And so about 9 months later, that summer, I approached one of my professors because I was really interested in doing some research. At the time, I didn't really know what that meant. I just thought, hey, I think this will fit the way that I view the world, and we'll just see what happens. And so he proposed that we could work on research that was compiled of a data set from annual pastors' reports that are sent out to every church in the Nazarene denomination, which is over 5,400. And so we got access to this data set, and it dates back to the beginning of the church in the early 1900s, and we got it through the year 2017. It's a lot of data, and it almost crashed my computer multiple times. But we decided to make that project my thesis, and as we were going through and running statistical analyses with this data set, I found that I was actually becoming more and more discouraged with the church. And that was really hard for me considering where I was spiritually anyway. But one of the biggest things that stood out to me was that the church was so focused on meeting spiritual growth, which is very important, but it wasn't good at meeting the basic needs of people, right? Whether that's in the congregation or even in the community. And that was something that the data consistently showed us. And so, you know, that just didn't really help me where I was at. So it was the second semester of my sophomore year, and a friend invited me to go to college group with her. And I went, and I had an amazing experience. And I realized what made my experience so valuable was, as part of that college group, once everything gets started, the first thing that they ask is, how are you really? And everyone in the room, the first night that I was there, was so honest in their answer. And that meant so much to me. Because as someone who felt like in the church, we had to act like we were like, you know, going and everything was doing great and you just don't talk about your problems. But people were being so honest in this room, and I needed that. And it allowed me to feel more vulnerable. So I think that was one glimmer of hope that allowed me to see beyond just this data set and beyond just, you know, what the researcher in me was noticing and as trends. Because even though there's 5,400 churches, it's not every church. And that's all statistic. It's not just like what you're seeing. There's always going to be exceptions in that. So it was at the beginning of this year that I started going to 8th Street with some friends, and it just aligned so much with the messages that I was getting from the psychology department and the ways that I'm learning to view the world and how I hold my identities and the ways that I'm pursuing psychology as a vocation, but what it means for me to still have my Christian identity embodied as part of that. And it turns out it's kind of hard. And so I think just I'm really thankful that, the church that I was going to as part of college group and this church are actually defying what I was seeing in statistical data. And these are not the only churches, but to me, it gives hope that the church is moving in the right direction. Because I don't think that what I'm seeing, statistically is unique to the Church of the Nazarene. I would definitely argue it's in most denominations, if not all of them. But it's just really nice that I'm able to attend a church that I feel like is actually meeting people where they're at, in their vulnerability, in full authenticity. Like I said, I need that, and I know that I'm not alone in that, and that's really helpful for me. And so I think I really want to say thank you for being an amazing community and letting me be part of this. Every week, whenever we go through these practices together, I'm just reminded of the ways that I'm striving to view the world as being a gift that I didn't necessarily deserve. But it shapes me in very powerful ways. And I'm really excited to use, the ways in which I'm becoming as my vocation as a psychologist, and what it means for me to hold those two things together in meeting people in that connection. And so, I just want to say thank you. I absolutely value this church and our time together. So, that's my story.